Well, just hours to go before the conclave begins, and Cardinals are having their final meetings before they take a vow of secrecy and enter the Sistine Chapel to begin voting.
Now, to be elected as the head of the Catholic Church, a candidate needs 2/3 of the tallied votes. If that doesn't happen, the church burns the ballots inside the cast iron stove with a chemical that sends black smoke. And that's seen atop the Sistine Chapel. When one is successfully chosen, white smoke will be seen.
That's right. And to speak more on the process of selecting a new pope and what happens during deliberations, we turn to Jamie Goodrich. She is professor of English and director of the Humanities Center at Wayne State University. Thanks so much for being with us, Jamie, especially so late tonight.
Thank you for having
Absolutely.
me.
To provide some context here for our viewers, for people who might not be familiar, can you tell us about the secrecy and seclusion that surrounds the conclave?
Sure. So conclave itself comes from the Latin word for with key, and this means that they will be locked into the Sistine Chapel and some adjoining guest chambers to conduct the deliberations. They take that oath of secrecy, which you mentioned, and the penalty for breaching the oath is automatic excommunication.
Serious.
So they take it very seriously. And they actually use cell phone jammers to prevent the Cardinals from leaking anything to the outside world. And you might wonder, why would we do this? And the answer is that they believe that they are going into this space to choose a pope that will be ordained by God. And so they're listening for that still small voice that the Bible talks about. You find that in seclusion and quiet, and so that is why they do it this way.
Professor Goodrich, any context or perspective in what these cardinals may be looking for, what qualities they may be looking for in the next pope?
Right, so there are really two different camps right now among the cardinals. One is looking for unity, which is another way of saying they'd like the church to be a little bit more conservative and uniform in its ideology. And the other group is talking about diversity, and they're more along the Francis line, thinking about the peripheries, thinking about differences as being a strength rather than a weakness. Sure. So it'll be between those two groups.
Okay.
Conclaves have been happening for years and years and years. How long does it usually take to, figure out who will be the next pope?
Sure. In the modern world, it takes between 2 and 4 days, but back in 1831, it took over 50 days.
Oh my.
So they can be longer, but I wouldn't think it would be much more than 4 days.
A lot of people are talking about Pope Francis and how he was characterized or described as being a reformer, even reaching out to a lot of African nations and also Asian countries. Any idea whether or not that will play an impact on this conclave at all when you talk about diversity?
Absolutely. So there are two ways we could see it play out. The first is that he did bring in quite a few cardinals from Africa. And the African cardinals tend to be more conservative than other cardinals. And so that may lead to more of a compromise, moderate or conservative candidate. On the other hand, the fact that he has added so many cardinals from both Africa and Asia could lead us to another candidate from the periphery.
Yeah. Talking about that, Pope Francis instigated a lot of reforms in the church, and some of those weren't popular with some cardinals, to say the least. In the next pope, if it turns out that he is more conservative than Francis, how do you think that will affect Catholics all over the world?
Well, it will certainly make things easier for the cardinals and the Catholics in Africa. As I was just saying, it's a more conservative part of the world. I think we definitely will see Catholics in Europe, in Central Europe in particular, feeling very left behind, that they're looking for change. So it's a little bit of a toss-up, how it will play out. It depends.
We will be watching with bated breath and eyes glued to the television to see how this all plays out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. And we'll be keeping you updated from the Vatican throughout the conclave right here on Local 4. Click on Detroit.com and streaming on Local 4 Plus. Also, we'll have a camera focused on the chimney atop the Sistine Chapel so you can catch the moment the white smoke appears.